Obstacles to Meditation. Ajahn Brahm. Welcome back everyone to Mind Podcast. In this video, I will explain in detail the 5 obstacles that hinder meditation practice and how you can overcome them. These obstacles are referred to in Pali as nivarana, which literally means to close the door, to block entry, or to obstruct. This is exactly what they do. They prevent us from entering a state of concentration and deeper meditation. They weaken wisdom and increase delusion. Therefore, in Buddhism, if someone wants to talk about the enemies of meditation, they can say that these 5 obstacles are the #1 enemy for all meditation practitioners. These obstacles prevent people from reaching enlightenment, so it is essential to understand and overcome them. As long as we don't fully understand them, we cannot deal with or surpass them. That's the principle. Some teachers do not explain the obstacles clearly or thoroughly, especially when it comes to the subtle obstacles. The subtle obstacles, those that are harder to identify after removing the more obvious ones, can hinder you from progressing to deeper levels of meditation. If you do not make an effort to recognize and address them, they will dominate your mind. You will be obstructed, unable to enjoy inner peace, and unable to develop the profound wisdom needed for enlightenment. Essentially, these 5 obstacles stand between you and enlightenment. When you clearly understand them, you will have a good opportunity to confront and overcome them. However, if you have not yet attained the jhana, deep states of meditation, it means you have not fully understood them. Conversely, if you have achieved these deep meditative states, it means you have successfully overcome these obstacles. The principle is that simple. The Buddha named the 5 obstacles as follows: 1. Sensual desire. 2. Ill will. 3. Sloth and torpor. 4. Restlessness and worry. 5. Doubt. This is the typical order that the Buddha arranged, and following this order, we will begin examining each one in detail. The first obstacle: sensual desire. Sensual desire is the first obstacle because of its significance among the 5 main hindrances. It is a major barrier that prevents meditators from entering deep states of meditation. Some practitioners fully understand its scope and impact. Sensual desire is not limited to common cravings related to the senses, as many people think. In Pali, the word kama refers to things associated with the 5 senses: sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. Meanwhile, chanda means preference, desire, or delight. Therefore, when these 2 words are combined as kama chanda, it means the pleasure, the enjoyment, and the attachment to the realm of the 5 senses. Basically, sensual desire. For example, when we are meditating and hear a sound, why can't we ignore it? Why does it bother us so much? Many years ago in Thailand, there were villages around our monastery, and they often held festivals. The sound from the loudspeakers was so intense that it seemed to shatter all the peace and tranquility of the monastery. When we complained to our teacher, Ajahn, saying that the noise disturbed our meditation, the great teacher replied, "It's not the noise that is disturbing you. It's you who are disturbing the noise." In this example, sensual desire is the mind getting attached to that sound. Similarly, when your meditation is disrupted by a pain, such as a sore leg, it's not the pain that's bothering you, but rather you are bothering the pain. If you were mindful, you would have noticed that your awareness had shifted away from the mind and focused on the body, paying attention to sensations. That's sensual desire at work. It is very challenging to counter sensual desire because we are so deeply entangled with the 5 senses and their activities. As a rule, when we are attached or bound to something, it is almost impossible for us to break free from it. To understand this attachment, we should consider the connection between our 5 senses and our body. People often say that the 5 senses exist to protect our body, but wisdom suggests the opposite, that the body exists to provide a vehicle for the 5 senses to wander and explore the world. You will notice that when the 5 senses are no longer active, the body ceases to exist in the same way. Letting go of one means letting go of the other as well, gradually letting go of sensual desire. It's not something simple. You cannot decide to let go of the 5 senses and the body with just a few singular efforts. Letting go of sensual desire during meditation must be done gradually, step by step, little by little. Start by choosing a comfortable and quiet place to meditate. You can sit on a chair if that makes you feel more at ease. Remember that even the Buddha occasionally sat on a chair to meditate. When you first close your eyes, you might not be able to feel much of your body. This is similar to stepping into a dark room after being outside in the light. It takes a few minutes for you to get accustomed to the darkness and begin to feel the sensations of your body. Therefore, it may take a few minutes after closing your eyes for you to adjust and find your final stable sitting position. Indulging sensual desire in this way will help you control it temporarily. Your body will feel comfortable and the five senses will be satisfied, but this state won't last long. You need to use this initial sense of comfort to place your mind above the five senses, not allowing them to reach your state of awareness. Begin by practicing present moment awareness. At this stage, much or all of the past and future are occupied by the elements of the five senses. Our memories are filled with sensory experiences, physical sensations, tastes, sounds, smells, or sights. Our plans are similarly filled with the activities of the five senses. But through practicing present moment awareness, we can cut off much of our sensual desire. The next stage of meditation is silent present moment awareness. At this stage, we let go of all thoughts. The Buddha identified an aspect of sensual desire called kama vitaka, sensual thoughts, meaning thoughts or reflections about the world of the five senses and sensual pleasures. For new meditators, the most apparent form of sensual thought is sexual thinking. People often spend a lot of time, especially during meditation retreats, grappling with this kind of sexual thought. This obstacle to meditation can be countered with correct understanding and wisdom, or with faith in the belief that complete freedom from the five senses, from sensual desire, is more blissful, ecstatic, and profound than the most pleasurable sexual experiences. For instance, the state of jhana, deep meditation absorption, is certainly far more joyful and sublime than any sensual pleasure. A monk or nun does not renounce the sexual life because they are depressed or fearful, but because they perceive or believe that there is a higher form of pleasure, the joy of meditation, the joy of liberation. Even thoughts about lunch can be a form of sensual desire meant to satisfy the body's cravings. Such thoughts disrupt silence. Few meditators realize that paying attention to bodily sensations is also a part of sensual desire and a hindrance to progress. For example, thoughts like, I am breathing in, I am hearing a sound, or I feel a sharp pain, all belong to the realm of sensual thoughts and are obstacles to spiritual practice. Lao Tzu's lesson on silence and mindfulness. Lao Tzu, the founder of Taoism in China, would often allow his disciples to take afternoon walks with him on the condition that they remain completely silent. One afternoon, as they were walking near the mountainside, a disciple commented, "The sunset is beautiful." After that day, Lao Tzu never allowed that disciple to accompany him again. When asked why, Lao Tzu replied, when he said the sunset is beautiful, he stopped looking at the sunset and was only looking at his own words. Therefore, you need to let go of commentary and judgment, because when you focus on your words, you lose mindfulness of the very thing you're trying to describe. In silent present moment awareness, it is as if the world of the five senses has been locked in a cage, unable to wander around and cause any disturbance. Letting go of the five senses and the body completely. Next, to let go of the five senses and the body completely, you should focus your mindfulness on a small part of the sensory world, isolating it from the rest. This small part is the breath. You concentrate your mindfulness on the sensation of the breath, without paying attention to anything else in the body, to any sounds, or to any other objects. The breath becomes a stepping stone for you to move from the realm of the five senses to a higher state of mind. When you successfully maintain complete focus on the breath, you will no longer hear any external sounds. You will never notice when the hearing stops because the nature of hearing fades gradually. This fading is a process, not an event, much like the slow aging and eventual death of the body over a long period. Typically, you can recognize this at the end of your meditation session, as I mentioned in Chapter 2, when you realize that for a certain period, for example 20 minutes, your mind was no longer aware of or hearing any sounds. You may also notice during meditation that the body has disappeared, as you no longer feel your legs or receive any information from them. All that you are aware of during meditation is the sensation of the breath. Some meditators may become panicked when parts of their body seem to disappear. This shows that their attachment to the body is still very strong. They have not yet let go of the body. This is sensual desire still present, still active, and still obstructing your progress in meditation. Over time, you will become accustomed to the gradual fading away of the body's sensations and start to enjoy the sublime stillness that lies beyond these perceptions. It is a form of liberation and joy born from letting go, and it serves as encouragement for you to continue releasing your attachments. Soon, the breath itself will disappear, and the wondrous nimitta, mental image or light, will appear fully in your mind. At this point, you have completely let go of all sensual desire. That is, you have let go of your attachment to the world of the five senses. When the nimitta is firmly established, all five senses are eliminated and your body is out of range. At this stage, sensual desire, the first great obstacle, has been overcome. At this point, the first great obstacle, sensual desire, has been overcome, and this achievement brings happiness. You are now on the threshold of entering the state of jhana, deep meditative absorption. This method of gradually letting go of sensual desire step by step is why the stages of meditation were developed and taught in a progressive manner. As the Buddha stated in the Jataka tales, the more you let go of the world of the five senses, the more you experience happiness. If you want to experience complete happiness, you need to let go of the entire world of the five senses. The second obstacle, ill will. The second obstacle is ill will, which can also be translated as aversion, anger, hatred, or resentment. This is another major hindrance to deep meditation. It is particularly significant for Westerners or those who have a survival of the fittest mindset. Generally, people think of ill will as anger or hatred towards others. But this definition does not fully capture its scope, because the ill will of meditators often manifests as aversion towards themselves or towards the meditation object. Aversion towards oneself. Aversion towards oneself often shows up as a reluctance to allow oneself to experience happiness, peace, or success in meditation, which might sound strange. But many people have this issue because they carry deep-rooted feelings of guilt inside. This is particularly common among Westerners due to the way they were raised and brought up in their cultural environment. Self-aversion can manifest as an attitude of self-surveillance or self-criticism during meditation, which can become a hindrance that prevents you from reaching deep concentration. Many years ago, I heard a Western nun tell me that she had meditated deeply and was on the brink of entering the jhana states. However, when she reached the threshold of jhana, something stopped her. A sense of unworthiness, as if she didn't deserve to experience that level of happiness. This was self-aversion hindering her progress, creating inner hesitation. Sometimes, when our meditation has become peaceful and the factor of happiness, joy, arises, we think that something is wrong. We have an aversion or guilt towards ourselves, so we block our own happiness and ease. In the case of this nun, she realized that a very subtle form of ill will was separating her from entering the state of jhana. She didn't think she deserved such a great amount of happiness. But in reality, everyone deserves to attain the happiness of jhana. Why not? There's nothing preventing this good outcome. There are, of course, forms of happiness that are illegitimate or unethical. Some people violate moral principles, cause harm, and create terrible consequences. But the state of jhana is not a negative outcome, nor is it illegitimate or unethical. The Buddha specifically encouraged the practice of deep meditation. If you take a closer look at your meditation practice, you may notice that you are confronting this obstacle of ill will. Don't wait until you're almost at the threshold of jhana to realize this, as in the case of the nun mentioned above. We should face the obstacle of ill will early on and counteract it when it first starts obstructing our enjoyment of peaceful meditation. Otherwise, you might only like sitting in meditation with a sense of suffering, rather than wanting to enjoy the happiness and peace of meditation. You may think that you are not worthy of happiness, blessings, and inner freedom, signs of self-aversion and guilt. Self-aversion towards inner happiness is a clear sign of guilt. When someone is found guilty, the next step is usually a punishment, as decided by a court of law. Guilt and punishment go hand in hand in our cultural consciousness. Therefore, when we think of guilt, the next thing we think of is punishment. This means denying ourselves relaxation, happiness, or pleasure. This can show up as feelings of guilt, shame, remorse, self-reproach, or a sense of unworthiness. Westerners, in particular, tend to seek punishment for themselves, which is quite irrational. To overcome this obstacle, we need to recognize that inner happiness, peace, and freedom are natural and deserved for everyone. There is no need for guilt or punishment when it comes to the joy of meditation. By letting go of self-aversion, we can open ourselves to deeper levels of peace and happiness in meditation. Kindness toward oneself. This concept is the opposite of self-aversion. To overcome the obstacle of self-aversion, you can practice loving-kindness meditation toward yourself as described in many Buddhist texts and teachings. Relax and tell yourself, "The door to my heart is wide open for myself. I allow myself to be happy. I allow myself to be peaceful. I have kindness toward myself, enough kindness to allow myself to be at peace and happy in meditation." If you find that you cannot practice loving kindness toward yourself, ask yourself why. There may be some underlying feelings of guilt buried deep within your consciousness, making you feel that there should be some form of punishment. You may not have granted yourself unconditional forgiveness. One of the beautiful moral aspects of Buddhism is not holding on to what others have done to you, even if they have done it repeatedly, excessively, or if what they did was unjust, cruel, or unreasonable. If you are a true Buddhist, you are able to forgive them, so why can't you forgive yourself? I often hear Buddhists say, there are some things that cannot be forgiven. This perspective is not in line with Buddhist teachings. There is absolutely nothing that cannot be forgiven in Buddhism. Many years ago, a person in Scotland entered an elementary school and killed many innocent children. During a church service held after this tragic massacre, a prominent cleric prayed for God not to forgive this murderer, saying that what he did was unforgivable. Given our usual feelings about compassion, resentment, and the need for security, that plea might seem reasonable, especially as a deterrent for other wrongdoers. However, when I heard this, my heart sank because the head of the local religious community was so determined not to forgive and was not willing to provide a path to healing the wounds of all involved after the tragedy. According to Buddhism, you can forgive everything. Such forgiveness dissolves old difficulties and does not create new ones. Similarly with yourself, if you constantly remind yourself of your past wrongdoings and do not forgive yourself, it neither resolves guilt nor leads to healing, but instead continues to create new difficulties. Sometimes the issue lies buried deep within. At times, you may have already forgotten it, but then something stirs it up from the subconscious, making you feel guilty again, indicating that you have not yet forgiven yourself. This guilt keeps you from attaining true freedom and prevents you from reaching deeper states of meditation and enlightenment. Many times, this is the main reason why your meditation practice is not successful. Reflect on this and remove that obstacle. Aversion toward your meditation object. Aversion toward your meditation object is a common difficulty for those practicing breath meditation without success. I use the word yet because it's only a matter of time before success comes. Anyone can succeed if they follow the proper meditation instructions. However, if you have not yet been successful, it could be due to aversion or not truly liking meditation or your meditation object. You might sit down and think, "Oh, here we go again," or "This is going to be hard," or "I don't want to do this at all," or "I'm doing this just because a spiritual practitioner is supposed to meditate," or "I meditate because I want to be a good Buddhist because people say that good Buddhists must meditate." But in reality, you don't actually enjoy it at all. If you begin meditation with aversion, practicing without truly wanting to, you're not going to get anywhere. You've already set up an obstacle right in front of yourself. Personally, I love meditation. It is something I look forward to and enjoy deeply. So, if you find that you're not making progress, consider whether you have a subtle resistance or dislike toward your meditation practice or the meditation object. It's crucial to address and overcome this aversion, as it's one of the main reasons hindering deeper states of concentration and meditation. I enjoy meditation immensely. That's why whenever I conduct a meditation retreat, I always tell my fellow practitioners as they arrive, "Wonderful. A meditation retreat, what could be better?" I wake up early in the morning and eagerly look forward to the time when I get to meditate. I'm in a meditation retreat, so I don't have to do other tasks around the monastery. Just like Zen practitioners who enter a meditation retreat, they only need to stay in the retreat room to meditate and are not required to perform any other monastery duties or religious services. I find so much joy in meditation that I have absolutely no trace of aversion or dislike towards it. Essentially, I'm a meditation addict or a meditation enthusiast. If you can adopt a similar attitude as I do, as the Buddha said, you will naturally and easily jump into meditation. I like to use this analogy. Suppose you're walking down the street and see an old dear friend from your youth on the other side. You were the best of friends back then. Even if you had an appointment or were running late for work, you would rush across the street, shake hands, and embrace them. Let's find a place to sit down for tea or coffee. It's been so long, we have to catch up and see how you've been. In that moment, being late for your appointment doesn't matter. Meditation is like that old friend you always make time to meet. You might want to put everything else aside just to sit down with that cherished friend. If you hear that this friend is a mile away, you'd run to them, embrace them, and invite them for a cup of coffee somewhere to chat and catch up. And for the meditation object, your breath, you should treasure it as you would a dear friend. More than that, the breath is yours. It is your life. We and our breath are the closest companions. If you know how to appreciate your breath, you will find focusing on it in meditation very easy. On the other hand, if you see your breath as boring or uninteresting, you will find it difficult to meditate on it. It's like seeing someone you dislike on the other side of the street and thinking, it's them again. You might hide behind a lamppost to avoid being seen. You don't want to encounter them. This makes things difficult. When you don't like something, it's very hard to be with it. This scenario is similar to going to the gym. You grit your teeth, strain your face, and lift weights until it's too painful to lift any longer. You endure the workout only because you hope that your muscles will become toned after the suffering and hard training. This might work for exercise, but it does not work for meditation. If you sit and meditate on the breath with an attitude of enduring it just to succeed, then you're setting yourself up for disappointment. Therefore, you need to cultivate kindness toward your meditation object. Just like with plain healthy food, you must believe it's good for your health to find it tasty. If you eat something you don't like, it's hard to enjoy it. Program yourself to love meditation. Think, this is wonderful. All I have to do is sit down and do nothing else. No worries, no letters to write, no calls to make. Just sitting down with my dear longtime friend, the breath. If you do this, you will overcome the obstacle of aversion towards the breath and develop a sense of loving kindness toward your own breath. How to cultivate loving kindness toward the breath. Here's a method I use to counter any aversion toward my breath. I look at my breath as if it were a newborn baby. Would you ever abandon a child at the supermarket? Would you ever leave a child alone on the street? Would you neglect or ignore a child for an extended period? Why then would we neglect our breath? Our breath is with us every moment, more intimately than even our own children. If we can't pay attention to our breath, it's probably because we lack kindness toward it. We don't enjoy it, and we don't appreciate it. When we develop kindness toward our breath, the meditation becomes easier and more enjoyable. Treat your breath as a precious friend and keep it close to your heart. By doing this, you will remove any aversion and cultivate a deep sense of appreciation and love for your breath, making your meditation practice more fruitful and meaningful. You should regard your breath as you would a child or a beloved family member, because it is an integral part of you, and it is very delicate and vulnerable. For this reason, you would never neglect, forget, or abandon it. You will always be mindful of it. On the contrary, if you have aversion towards your breath, you will find yourself restless and constantly drifting away from it, forgetting about it. You will always be trying to avoid it, because you don't like it. As a result, you will lose your meditation object, overcoming aversion with loving kindness. In summary, ill will or aversion is an obstacle, and you can counter it by cultivating compassion towards others, by having loving kindness and self-compassion for yourself, by showing loving kindness toward your meditation object, by having goodwill toward meditation itself, and by having a friendly and affectionate attitude toward your breath. You can also develop a sense of loving kindness towards silence and the present moment. When you take care of these friends within your mind, your meditation objects, you will overcome all aversion toward them while sitting in meditation. When you cultivate loving kindness and affection toward the meditation object, you don't have to put in a lot of effort to hold on to it. You don't have to struggle to stay with it. Instead, you will naturally stay connected with it. Because when there is kindness and care, you want to be there. This relationship with your breath becomes effortless. When you cherish your breath as a friend or loved one, staying mindful and present with it feels natural and rewarding, eliminating the struggle to remain focused during meditation. Now we have 3 remaining hindrances to address: sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry, and doubt. We will explore how to counter these hindrances and see what happens when we successfully overcome them. The third hindrance: sloth and torpor. The third hindrance is sloth and torpor. I don't need to describe this hindrance much, as we are all too familiar with it from our own meditation experiences. When we are sitting in meditation, we may not actually know what we are observing. Are we observing the present moment, the silence, the breath, or something else? This happens because the mind is clouded and dull. It's like there is no light switched on inside. It's as if you're in a dark room without a lamp. Everything appears gray and indistinct. Making peace with sloth and torpor. The most profound and effective way to deal with sloth and torpor is to make peace with it and befriend the dullness. Don't fight against it. When I was a young monk practicing in the forest monasteries of Thailand, I often experienced drowsiness during the 3:15 a.m. meditation sessions. I struggled and fought with all my might to overcome that clouded state of mind, but I often failed. When I did manage to overcome drowsiness, restlessness would then appear. And when I calmed the restlessness, drowsiness would return. My meditation was like a pendulum swinging back and forth between the two extremes, never finding a balance in the middle. It took me many years to understand the root cause of this problem. The Buddha advocated investigation and understanding, not resistance. I reflected on where my drowsiness and dullness were coming from. At that time, I always meditated at 3:15 a.m., slept very little, and suffered from malnutrition, an English monk in a tropical rainforest. What do you expect? It was only natural. The dullness was the result of natural causes. So I let go and began to befriend the sleepiness. I stopped resisting it and just allowed my head to droop. I let myself sit there and nod off. Who knows, I might have even snored. When I no longer resisted sleepiness and dullness, they didn't last long. Furthermore, once the drowsiness disappeared, I was no longer restless either. I found the equilibrium in the middle of the pendulum's swing, and from there I could easily observe my breath. Understanding sloth and torpor. The knower and the doer. Dullness during meditation is often the result of a tired mind, usually a mind that has been overworked. The more you resist this dullness, the more exhausted you become. Rest and relaxation will help you regain your energy. To understand this process, let me introduce the concept of the 2 halves of the mind, the knower and the doer. These terms have been used in earlier chapters. The knower is the passive half of the mind that simply receives information. The doer is the active half of the mind that always reacts, evaluates, thinks, and controls. The knower and the doer share a common pool of mental energy. So when you are doing a lot, when you lead a busy lifestyle and are constantly engaged, the doer consumes most of the mind's energy, leaving only a small portion to sustain the knower. When the knower is deprived of energy, you experience dullness, like a battery running out of power. Finding balance between the knower and the doer. The key to overcoming sloth and torpor is to restore balance between the knower and the doer. Instead of fighting against the dullness or trying to force yourself to stay alert, allow yourself to rest and replenish your mental energy. Stop the excessive doing and let the knower regain its strength. Practical steps to overcome sloth and torpor. 1. Recognize the need for rest. If you're feeling drowsy during meditation, it might be your body and mind's way of telling you that they need rest. Instead of resisting, allow yourself to relax and take a break if necessary. 2. Befriend the drowsiness. Rather than seeing drowsiness as an enemy to be fought, welcome it with a friendly attitude. Let your head droop if necessary. Acknowledge the drowsiness without getting frustrated. 3. Investigate the causes. Consider the factors that might be contributing to your sloth and torpor. Are you meditating at a time when you're naturally tired? Are you overworking yourself? Is your body lacking proper nutrition or sleep? Understanding the underlying causes will help you address them effectively. 4. Restore energy to the knower. By reducing the activity of the doer and letting go of excessive control and evaluation, you can restore energy to the knower and allow it to regain clarity and alertness. By making peace with sloth and torpor and addressing the underlying causes, you will find that the dullness and cloudiness of mind will naturally dissipate. Your mind will become clear and alert, allowing you to observe your breath or any meditation object with ease and comfort. During a meditation retreat I led in Sydney a few years ago, a meditator arrived late after many exhausting days of work in the city. When she sat down, her mind was already completely worn out. So I advised her on how to overcome her sleepiness and dullness. I told her to go and rest. For the next 3 days, she slept until morning, had breakfast, went back to bed, then had another long nap after lunch. A very smart meditator indeed. After 3 days of not resisting her sleepiness, without expending any energy on the doer, and letting energy flow entirely to the knower, her mind became clear and bright. Over the next 3 days, she caught up with the group and progressed through the meditation stages. By the end of the retreat, she surpassed the entire group and became the most accomplished meditator of the retreat. The most profound and effective way to overcome sleepiness and dullness is to stop resisting your mind. Don't try to change the state. Just let it be. Make peace with the sleepiness and dullness. Don't wage war against them. When you do this, mental energy will naturally flow to the knower, and the state of sleepiness and dullness will disappear on its own, enhancing awareness. Another way to counter the hindrance of sleepiness and dullness is to emphasize the value of awareness. All Buddhist traditions say that human life is valuable and precious, especially when it is connected with the teachings of the Buddha. Right now, you have the opportunity to practice. You don't know how many lifetimes you've gone through and how much good karma you've accumulated to have the fortunate opportunity to encounter the Buddha's noble teachings in this life. You have invested countless lifetimes creating good karma to be here in this lifetime and to have close access to the Buddha's teachings. I have hundreds of friends throughout my life, including close friends, who have a good level of education in their everyday lives, but none of them want to hear more than 1 or 2 sentences about the topic of Buddhism. None of them have genuinely read even a few pages of the Buddhist books I've gifted them. This is certain because they never mentioned or discussed anything about the Buddha's teachings contained in those books. Their attitude is as if they already know everything. As if Buddhism is just about going to temples, offering food to monks, and praying. Their understanding of Buddhism is truly superficial. And if we try to suggest they take more interest, they might get annoyed and think that we are hypocritical or fear death, and that's why we keep talking about Buddhism. For those of you reading this who are meditating, when you reflect on your current opportunity and blessings, you will naturally sit up straight, you will feel less sleepy, and your awareness will become clearer and brighter. Choosing the right path in meditation. Sometimes the path of meditation leads to crossroads. Turning left leads to sleepiness and dullness. Turning right leads to bright and clear awareness. Through practical experience, you will recognize these crossroads. That's when you must choose between falling into the narrow path of sleepiness and dullness, or taking the highway leading to a state of calmness filled with awareness and mindfulness. Turning left means abandoning both the doer and the knower. Turning right means leaving behind the doer, but keeping the knower. When you give the correct value to awareness, the knower, you will naturally choose to turn right and follow the path of bright awareness. The connection between sloth and torpor and ill will. Sometimes, sleepiness and dullness are the result of ill will or aversion, the second hindrance. I once visited a prison in Australia to teach meditation, and I often heard the prisoners say, "Sleeping for another hour means one less hour spent in prison." They didn't like their imprisonment, so they tried to escape into sleep, into a state of dullness and lethargy. The same is true for meditators. When a meditator doesn't have a positive attitude toward meditation, lacks enthusiasm and goodwill toward meditation, or simply doesn't enjoy it, they easily become sleepy and dreamy. Aversion is the issue here. In our monastery in Thailand, we had an all-night meditation session once a week. During that overnight meditation, sleepiness and dullness often overcame me after midnight, around 1 or 2 a.m. During my first year as a newly ordained monk, I reflected on nights less than a year earlier when I was still in England. Back then, I could easily stay up all night at parties, rock concerts, and nightclubs. I remembered that during those nights, I never felt sleepy or drowsy while listening to music at a nightclub called The Doors at 2 a.m. in London. Why? After some contemplation, I realized that when we are genuinely interested in what we're doing, we are not easily overcome by sleepiness, drowsiness, or laziness. On the contrary, when we do not enjoy what we're doing, we can easily fall into a state of drowsiness, lethargy, or laziness. At that time, I didn't like the idea of sitting in meditation all night. I thought it was a stupid idea. I did it only because I had to. It was the monastery's discipline. I had aversion, and that aversion was the cause of my sleepiness and dullness. When I changed my attitude and brought more enjoyment into the all-night meditation sessions, making it something worthwhile to do, the sleepiness and dullness gradually disappeared because there was no longer any reason for the aversion. Therefore, you should investigate within yourself to see whether the sleepiness and dullness are the result of an attitudinal problem, specifically, aversion. Using fear is not effective. When I was still a lay Buddhist, I attended a meditation retreat led by Zen monks in northern England. The early morning weather in England is extremely cold, and the meditation hall felt as freezing as an icebox. Everyone wrapped blankets around themselves. When you meditate with a warm blanket in the cold, it's easy to feel sleepy, because the cozy feeling of drowsiness amidst the cold in a warm blanket is quite delightful. The meditation master walked up and down with a stick, and as soon as the person sitting next to me nodded off, they were struck with the stick. Everyone else jerked awake, and their sleepiness vanished too. Just one person getting hit was enough. The fear of being struck kept me wide awake. However, in reality, fear only hinders the mind's progress in meditation. Experience teaches us that we cannot cultivate wholesome mental states through unwholesome methods. This means we cannot create inner peace and liberation in meditation through the use of fear, such as hitting, yelling, or harsh methods. In the ancient tradition of the forest meditation lineage in northeastern Thailand, monks would meditate in dangerous places like high platforms built on trees, on rocky ledges beside steep cliffs, or in dense forests filled with tigers and leopards. Those who survived claimed they meditated very well, but no one knows how those who didn't survive meditated. The importance of enjoyment in meditation practice. Reflecting on my own experience, I realized that a major factor contributing to my drowsiness during those early years as a monk was simply a lack of enjoyment and genuine interest in what I was doing. When I didn't enjoy the meditation, it became burdensome, and my mind naturally wanted to escape through sleepiness or distraction. However, once I changed my perspective and started to look forward to the meditation sessions, seeing them as opportunities rather than obligations, my experience transformed. The sessions no longer felt like a struggle, and sleepiness became much less frequent. Key lesson: if you notice yourself becoming drowsy or sluggish during meditation, it's worth examining whether it's because you don't truly enjoy the practice. If that's the case, consider ways to cultivate a sense of joy and interest in the meditation object. By doing so, the hindrance of sloth and torpor will have less hold over your mind, and you will find it easier to maintain clarity and focus during your sessions. The fourth hindrance, restlessness and worry. The next hindrance, restlessness and worry, is one of the subtlest of all the hindrances. The primary component of this hindrance is the restlessness of the mind. But first, let's take a look at the worry aspect. Worry. To be precise, worry in this context is the result of wrong actions or words we've committed. It can be described as a sense of remorse or guilt that clings to us like a trailer attached to a vehicle. In other words, it is the consequence of unwholesome actions. If a sense of worry or regret arises in your mind during meditation, instead of dwelling on it, you should forgive yourself. Everyone has made mistakes. No one is perfect. A wise person is not someone who never makes mistakes, but someone who knows how to forgive themselves and learns from those mistakes to improve. Some people, burdened with a heavy conscience or feelings of guilt, may think that it's nearly impossible for them to attain enlightenment or liberation. The story of Angulimala is a famous one recorded in the Angulimala Sutta. Angulimala was a serial murderer during the Buddha's time. He had killed 999 people and collected a finger from each victim, stringing them together as a garland around his neck. His 1,000th intended victim was the Buddha himself. Of course, he could not kill the Buddha. Instead, it was the Buddha who killed him. Killed his unwholesome tendencies, cleansed his impurities. Angulimala renounced his former life, took refuge in the Buddha, and became a monk in the Sangha. Eventually, even a mass murderer like him practiced and attained deep states of meditation and complete enlightenment. So, have you ever killed anyone? Have you ever been a serial killer? Probably not. You most likely have never done anything nearly as atrocious as that. If even someone as malevolent as Angulimala could train his mind and attain enlightenment, surely you can too. You can overcome the wrongdoings you've committed in the past, or whatever it is that keeps causing you guilt and regret in your heart. Every time you feel such regret or remorse, remember the story of Venerable Arahant Angulimala from the Buddha's time. Thinking of his example, you will no longer feel ashamed of yourself. Forgiveness and letting go of the past are how you overcome worry and remorse. Restlessness arises because we do not know how to accept and be content with the present reality. We often fail to recognize the beauty of contentment. We don't realize the profound ease in simply doing nothing. This is a state of mind at rest, not doing anything, not reacting, not feeling the need to do this or that. It's a profound ease of the mind. That's where its beauty lies. We have a mind that is always seeking out faults instead of appreciating what is already there. Restlessness during meditation is always a sign of not finding joy in what is presently before you. Whether or not you find joy depends on how you perceive things. It's within our capacity. We can change the way we look at things. You can look at a glass of water and see it as beautiful, or you can think it is plain and ordinary. In meditation, we can see the breath as dull and boring, or we can see it as beautiful and unique. If we view the breath as something precious and valuable, we will not feel restless. You won't be looking around or searching for something else. Restlessness is exactly that. It is a constant search for something else to do, something else to think about, somewhere else to go, moving restlessly from one place to another instead of just staying and focusing on the here and now. Restlessness is a major hindrance, on par with sensual desire. It prevents the mind from settling into the calm and tranquility needed for deep meditation. How to overcome restlessness and worry. 1. Forgive yourself. If worry arises due to past actions or words, practice self-forgiveness. Understand that everyone makes mistakes, learn from them, and let go of guilt and regret. 2. Let go of the past. Remember the story of Angulimala. If even a person as notorious as Angulimala could transform and attain enlightenment, so can you. Let go of your past mistakes, stop clinging to guilt, and move forward. 3. Cultivate contentment. Learn to appreciate the present moment and the meditation object. When you cultivate a sense of joy and contentment with what you have and where you are, restlessness will naturally diminish. 4. Shift your perspective. Change the way you view your meditation object. See the breath, for example, as something valuable and interesting. By shifting your perspective, you'll find it easier to stay focused and calm. 5. Practice mindful presence. Remind yourself to come back to the present moment. Notice when your mind starts wandering or searching for something else. Bring your attention back to the simplicity and ease of just being present. When you stop searching for something else and accept the present moment with a sense of calm and contentment, restlessness and worry will gradually lose their grip on your mind. Restlessness makes it difficult for us to sit still and remain calm for a long period of time. I began practicing meditation through awareness in the present moment, just to counteract the coarse nature of restlessness. A restless mind is constantly telling me, I want to be somewhere else other than here and now. No matter where I am or how pleasant that place might be, restlessness still says it's not good enough, and it keeps buzzing around, agitated, searching for something different. Restlessness shows itself in funny and subtle ways, making me think the meditation cushion is either too small or too big, a bit too firm or too soft, a little too high or too low. These little thoughts can trouble a meditator the moment they sit down to meditate. It also looks around at your meditation center and deems it not quiet enough, not beautiful enough. It even thinks your meditation place should provide 3 meals a day and someone should come help clean up and serve tea in your room. These thoughts can also cause meditators to get lost in their own minds, preventing the tranquility needed for meditation. Contentment is the opposite of this fault-finding mind. You have to cultivate the habit of being content with what you have and with where you are, as much as possible. Be mindful of the tendency to nitpick and find flaws in your meditation practice. Sometimes you might think, I haven't meditated deeply enough. I've observed the present moment for so long, but nothing worthwhile has happened. This very thought is the root of restlessness. Meditation has nothing to do with your opinions. Be absolutely content with your meditation practice, and then it will naturally deepen and you'll see better results. If you're not satisfied with your progress, you're only making it worse. Forget about attaining higher meditative states. Just be content with the here and now, in this present moment. When your contentment deepens, when you are truly at peace and satisfied with yourself, it will naturally lead you toward attaining higher meditative states like jhana. Observe the silence and be satisfied with the silence. If you're truly content, there's no need to say anything. Typically, internal dialogues are always expressions of comparison, complaints, restlessness, wanting to change everything, wanting things to be different, or wanting to do something else. Isn't that true? Or maybe the mind just wants to escape the present and hide in a world of thoughts and ideas? This constant thinking is a sign of discontentment. If you're truly content, you will always be quiet and silent. Observe and try to cultivate your contentment as deeply as possible, because it is the antidote to restlessness. Even when you're in pain and feel extremely uncomfortable, you can change your perception and see it as something completely pleasant, even beautiful. Just to clarify, this change in perception is meant to benefit you. It doesn't mean you should distort reality by forcing pain to appear beautiful. Suffering is just a result of how we perceive things. It's all about our perspective. Try to see if you can be content with the pain or the location of the pain. Can you ignore the pain? In my monastic life, there have been times when I experienced intense pain. Instead of trying to escape, which would mean always seeking ways out and feeling restless, I trained my mind to turn back and fully accept the pain, to be completely content with it. I realized that human beings can be entirely content with even the most excruciating pain. If we can do that, be content with pain, then the worst part of the pain will naturally disappear along with the restlessness associated with it. You no longer have the desire to get rid of it. You remain completely still with that feeling. The restlessness that accompanies pain may actually be the worst part of it. By removing the restlessness through contentment with the pain, you can find ease even amidst the discomfort. Cultivate contentment with everything you have. This present moment, the silence, the breath. No matter where you are, develop a sense of contentment, and from that place of contentment, at the very core of it, your meditation will naturally deepen and become more beneficial. So, if you sense restlessness in your mind, remember the word contentment. Contentment helps you discern what is right and keeps you calm. Conversely, restlessness only turns you into its slave. There is an example that the Buddha used. Restlessness is like having a domineering master constantly ordering, get this, do that, clean more thoroughly, continuously, without a moment of rest for you. That tyrant is the mind that is always nitpicking and looking for faults. Subdue that tyrant through contentment. Once you've dealt with the general, coarse forms of restlessness, its subtler aspects will show up in the deeper stages of meditation. The deeper stage I'm referring to is when a meditator first encounters the sign of nimitta. Because of restlessness, you cannot keep nimitta stable. You become agitated around it. You are not satisfied with the nimitta you have. You want more of it. You become excited. Restlessness is one of the hindrances that cause the nimitta to disappear. In reality, you must understand that when nimitta appears, you have already arrived. You don't need to do anything else. Just let it be. Be content with it, and it will naturally develop. That is contentment. Doing absolutely nothing, just sitting there and observing as a nimitta blooms and blossoms into the state of jhana meditation. Whether it happens in 1 hour, 5 hours, or never happens, you should still be content without dissatisfaction. That's how you enter the jhana state of meditation. If nimitta comes and goes, that's a sign that restlessness is present in your mind. If you can maintain awareness effortlessly, in a relaxed and gentle way, it means that restlessness has been subdued. The final hindrance is called doubt, vicikiccha. Doubt can be about the teachings, the teacher, or yourself. Regarding doubt about the teachings, at this very moment, you need to trust that meditation will undoubtedly bring good results. You may have already experienced many positive states of meditation, even after just a few initial sessions of sitting in silence and calmness. Let those positive experiences strengthen your belief that meditation is a valuable practice. When you meditate, you develop the mind in tranquility. Particularly, cultivating the mind in states of jhana, deep meditative absorption, is extremely precious because it brings clarity, bliss, and deeper understanding of the Buddha's teachings. Regarding doubt about your teachers, think of them as coaches for a sports team. Their job is to teach the players through their own experiences, tactics, and strategies, and to inspire them through their words and actions. However, before placing your trust in a teacher, you should carefully examine them. See whether the teachers truly practice what they preach. If they have first-hand experience and understand what they are talking about, then they are ethical and virtuous role models worthy of your trust. Only those teachers who lead by example, good examples, are the ones you should trust. Regarding doubt about yourself, the kind of thinking like, I'm hopeless, I can't do this, I'm useless. Everyone else seems to be able to reach higher meditative states and enlightenment, except for me. To overcome such thoughts of self-doubt, you need a teacher who can inspire and encourage you. The teacher's job is to say to you, that's not true, you can definitely succeed in this practice. Many people have succeeded, so why can't you? Encourage yourself. Believe that you can achieve your goals. In reality, you have the determination and the faith. The issue is simply a matter of time. If you haven't succeeded yet, it's probably due to some underlying reasons, but you will eventually succeed. You must believe in yourself. This type of belief is entirely reasonable. People only fail when they give up. Doubt often arises when you're experiencing something during meditation. What is this? Is this jhana? Is this truly awareness of the present moment? These doubts are hindrances. Doubts during meditation are inappropriate, untimely, and unhelpful. Keep your mind as peaceful as possible. Let go and enjoy the peace and happiness. Later, you can review and reflect on your meditation. What was that? What was so captivating? What happened at that moment? After asking and reflecting like this, you will know whether it was a state of jhana or just your imagination. However, if while meditating you have thoughts like, is this jhana? Then it's definitely not jhana. In the state of jhana, there are no discursive thoughts at all. If you are truly in jhana, there are no thoughts in that moment. Such thoughts cannot exist in a deep and tranquil state like that. Only afterward, once you have emerged from meditation and are reflecting on those states, can you look back and say, that was indeed jhana. I've just attained a meditative absorption. If you encounter difficulties during meditation, pause and ask yourself, what hindrance is present here? Find the root cause. Once you know the cause, you'll remember the solutions, techniques you've learned to counteract it. To recap, if the hindrance is sensual desire, gradually shift your attention away from the five senses step by step and focus it on the breath or the mind. If the hindrance is ill will, practice mindfulness of loving kindness. If the hindrance is drowsiness and lethargy, remember to elevate the value of mindfulness and alertness. If the hindrance is restlessness and worry, remember contentment, contentment, contentment. If it's a feeling of remorse or guilt, then cultivate self-compassion and forgiveness. If the hindrance is doubt, have confidence in yourself and trust in the Buddha's teachings. Always stay inspired by the Dharma. Whenever you meditate, apply these solutions methodically and systematically as you've been taught. By doing so, the hindrances you encounter will not create lasting barriers to your meditation practice. In fact, hindrances are things you can recognize, deal with, and overcome to progress further in your practice. Where hindrances operate. We have discussed each hindrance individually, and now I want to point out that these hindrances actually arise from a single source. They come from one furnace. They are produced by that peculiar tendency within you that always wants to control and refuses to let go of everything. Meditators often fail to deal with hindrances because they're searching for them in the wrong place. The most important thing to understand is, you can only see hindrances in the space between the knower and the known. The root of the hindrances lies in the doer, but their actual operating workshop is in the space between the mind and the mind's object of meditation. Essentially, the five hindrances are a relational problem and obstacle. Skilled meditators, when observing the breath, also pay attention to the manner in which they observe their breath. If there is expectation, anticipation, preconception in the space between you and the breath, it means you're observing the breath with a sense of craving. This is a manifestation of sensual desire, the first hindrance. If you notice forcefulness, aggression, in the space between you and the breath, then you're observing the breath with ill will, the second hindrance. Or if fear arises in the space between you and the breath, perhaps due to the worry of losing mindfulness of the breath, then you are observing the breath with a combination of several hindrances. By observing the relationship you have with your object of meditation, you can identify which hindrance is operating in the space between the observer, you, and the object, your breath or mind's focus. For a moment, it may seem like your meditation is progressing well. You're able to maintain the object of the breath in your mind for many minutes. But then, suddenly, you feel stuck and can't seem to go any deeper in your meditation. You become easily distracted. This means that you have been observing the wrong object. Your task in meditation is to recognize the hindrances and remove them from the mind. Only by doing this can you successfully progress through each stage of meditation, rather than trying to achieve success at each stage through sheer willpower. In each stage of meditation, you need to introduce peace or kindness into the space between you and the breath. Peace and kindness are always safe. For instance, when sensual thoughts arise, bring peace into that space, and those thoughts will naturally dissolve. Cultivate gentleness. Create more peace rather than engaging in a struggle with the ignorance of the mind. Place kindness between the observer and the aching body, and agree to a truce in the battle between you and the restless mind. Stop trying to control and start letting go. Just like a house is built brick by brick, the house of peace, the state of meditation, is also built through thousands of moments of peace. If, in each moment, you bring peace as well as gentleness and kindness into the space between you and the breath, then thoughts of sensual desire will disappear, pain will fade away, ignorance will turn into clarity, restlessness will lose its power, and naturally, the state of jhana will arise. In summary, you need to recognize that the five hindrances occur in the space between the observer and the observed, the knower and the known. Therefore, bring peace and kindness into that space. It's not just about being mindful, but about developing what I call unconditional mindfulness, awareness that doesn't attempt to control or interfere with what it perceives. If we can do this, all hindrances will weaken and fade away. Example of the snake. Many meditators complain about a particular hindrance that feels like an animal they keep encountering frequently. This is a type of hindrance that reappears again and again during meditation. A recurring hindrance can be dealt with using a method similar to the one for avoiding snakes, as illustrated in the following example. In the early years of my monastic life in Thailand, I would often return to my hut late at night and walk barefoot, since we didn't have shoes or sandals. I would navigate my way using the starlight, especially when my flashlight ran out of batteries. Although there were many snakes on the forest paths, I was never bitten. I knew they were there and were very dangerous, so I would step carefully, watching to the left, to the right, and in front of me to avoid stepping on snakes. If I saw a dark spot on the path, even if it might just be a branch, I would jump over it or step left or right to avoid it. This cautious approach saved me from many dangers. Similarly, on the path of practice, there are many dangerous hindrances lurking, waiting to catch you and block your progress. If you know beforehand that they are lying in wait and are dangerous, you will proactively avoid them, and thus won't get caught by them. The kind of hindrance you frequently encounter is like the snakes that densely populate the forest. Therefore, when you first sit down to meditate, remind yourself of that animal-like hindrance. Warn yourself of its dangers, then start being vigilant. Right in the space between the knower and the known throughout your meditation session. Keep watch and avoid the hindrance when it arises in that space. By using this method of vigilance, you will find it difficult to get caught by them. Nalagiri strategy. Some meditators often say that they encounter all 5 hindrances at the same time, and they're very intense. When they think about it, they feel like going crazy because they can't focus even for a single second. There's not a single moment of peace during meditation. To help meditators who are attacked by multiple acute and intense hindrances, I often teach them to use the Nalagiri strategy based on a story from the Buddha's life. The enemies of the Buddha had intoxicated the elephant Nalagiri with alcohol, making it go mad, and they unleashed it onto a narrow path where the Buddha was walking for alms. Those who saw the drunken elephant panicked and ran away. Only Venerable Ananda, the Buddha's loyal attendant, risked his life to confront the wild elephant and save the Buddha. The Buddha gently moved Venerable Ananda aside and stepped forward to face the raging elephant. I am convinced that the Buddha possessed miraculous powers, and he could have easily lifted the elephant and spun it 3 times in midair or hurled it across the Ganges River. But that's not the Buddha's way. The Buddha most certainly used loving kindness, metta, to communicate with the elephant, and may have thought, Nalagiri, the door to my heart is always open to welcome you, no matter what you do to me. Even if you crush me with your body or trample me under your feet, I will accept it wholeheartedly and never harbor ill will towards you. I still love you unconditionally. The Buddha gently placed peace between himself and the wild elephant. That is the unshakable power of true loving kindness and true letting go. Within a few seconds, the elephant's rage subsided, and Nalagiri obediently knelt down before the great compassionate Buddha, listening as the Buddha soothingly said, "That's right, Nalagiri." Many times, when meditating, the minds of meditators can become as wild as an intoxicated elephant, going berserk over everything. In such situations, remember this Nalagiri strategy. Do not use force to subdue the wild elephant in your mind. Use loving kindness and letting go. O my raging mind, the door to my heart is always open to welcome you. No matter if you destroy me or crush me, I will accept it wholeheartedly and never harbor ill will toward you. Create peace with your frantic mind. Do not resist it. This is the true power of loving kindness and letting go. Amazingly, after just a brief moment, the mind will release its agitation and obediently bow before you, and then gentle mindfulness will softly soothe it. That's right, my mind. When are the hindrances subdued? This question means, for how long are the hindrances subdued or eliminated? When they are countered, are they permanently removed or just during meditation? Initially, you only subdue or overcome them temporarily. When you come out of a deep meditation session, you will reflect and realize that those hindrances have disappeared for a significant period. The mind at this time is very sharp, very calm. You can focus on one thing for a long time, and there's no trace of ill will. You become gentle, not angry with anyone, even if they hit you on the head. You no longer crave sensual pleasures such as sexual desire. This is the result of good meditation practice. But after a while, depending on the depth and duration of that meditation session, those hindrances may return. It's like the scene in a boxing ring. They've just been knocked out. They were unconscious for a while, but they get back up and continue their chaotic fight. At the very least, you've experienced what it's like to subdue or knock out the hindrances. The more you delve into those deep meditative stages, the more often those hindrances are defeated, and the more they become weakened and wounded. Eventually, it's the work of enlightened wisdom to completely destroy those weakened hindrances once and for all. This is the way of the ancient Buddhist path. You knock down the hindrances many times through meditation to create opportunities for wisdom to arise. Then wisdom will illuminate and see through those weakened hindrances and completely eliminate them. When the hindrances are entirely eradicated, you become radiant and enlightened. This is the principle of the practice. And when you are enlightened, it is no longer difficult to enter the jhana states of meditation because the obstacles are no longer there. What once stood between you and the jhana states has been completely destroyed.